Welcome, everyone, to Season 2 of the Dolphins Make Me Cry podcast. Your host, Steve Giordano, and wow, what a wild offseason the Miami Dolphins have had. I want to go back in time to the end of last year before we then take ourselves to where we are today and where we are headed in the 2025 season. So, as we wrapped up last year, the Dolphins lost that game to the Jets. Tyreek Hill essentially quit on the team, which was inexcusable. And then fast forward into the offseason where he then has to go on this apology tour with Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer, the entire organization. He has his own issues in his own life with domestic issues and what have you. And the Dolphins decide to keep him. And, of course, they were going to. When you have Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel on the hot seat, you're sure as hell not going to get rid of the number one target and weapon that you have. You are going to put up with his bullshit and deal with it and hope to save your job in the coming season. So my take on that was you kind of had to do it. It kind of is what it is. And now we fast forward to a season where it's put up or shut up. You've had 2 straight years, 2023 and 2024, where in 2023 you were overachieving until you were essentially underachieving and blowing the division to the Bills, where you had the 3-game lead with 5 to go, to then 2024, which was a complete cluster with, Tua going down, the concussion issues, holding him out the extra week, losing the Colts game because of it, inconsistent play, bad special teams, too many penalties, too many turnovers. The list goes on and on and on. And what does that ultimately land you on? To me, poor coaching. So now as we get ready for this season and this tumultuous offseason that we've had, this takes us to now where it has to be now or never. To me, Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer do not survive, in my opinion, without a playoff victory, not a playoff berth, not this sneak in at 9 wins and go on the road and play Baltimore or Buffalo or Kansas City in the cold and get killed. It's win a playoff game. Now, that could mean winning the division. I think that's a tall ask with the Bills. I think the Bills have that thing locked up, but could you find a way to be a wild card and actually win that playoff game? And I'm going to get into my season prediction as we get to the end of this podcast, but my spoiler alert is no. So now as we progress through the offseason, the Dolphins made some cheap moves when it came to free agency. They didn't do anything to light the world on fire. And there is a glaring narrative, I think, that is not being said enough. And that is, because McDaniel was given all this free agency money in the last 2 years, and he was given a ton of talent. Now, Stephen Ross, in my opinion, put his foot down and said, okay, enough's enough. We're going to stop the spending. We're going to stop putting ourselves in a future hole, and you're going to try and win with this roster. And the thing that I liked when it came to the NFL draft was, and the offseason in general, was we need more fat boys. We need more people on the O-line and the D-line. We need to build, to the best of our ability, a physical football team. I've been screaming that for decades. They've had some certain patches in certain years. 2016 comes to mind, where they had a physical team, 2008. And lo and behold, those were the best years the Dolphins had where they made the playoffs. What a coincidence. But when you think about what they did in the offseason in that narrative with Mike McDaniel, where they essentially said, we're just going to, we cannot egregiously continue to spend and give bad contracts to guys, Jalen Ramsey, who we're going to get into, the Tyreek Hill deal from a year ago. This was, we're going to build through the draft, and we are going to find smash mouth physical football players, and we are going to learn to play more of that style. Now, is that going to happen overnight? No. Is it going to happen if his mentality doesn't change? No. And essentially, in one offseason, you can only do so many things and fill so many holes. And I'm going to talk about the holes on this team, and there's more holes on this team than Swiss cheese. But that being said, they went out in the draft, and I like what they did. Kenneth Grant on the D-line, and Anawai, I know I'm saying his name completely wrong, the guard that they drafted, who is I think probably going to be two pretty solid NFL players. And the fact of the matter is they are going to be coming right in and starting. And I think I have the name wrong. Savinaya is how I think he properly pronounces his last name, the guard that they drafted. And you went out and you signed some other guys for depth on the O-line, on the D-line. The strength of this football team will be the front seven. There's no doubt about it. They have a wealth of defensive tackles. They drafted Biggers. They drafted Jordan Phillips. You obviously, you lose a Calais Campbell, but they got young and they got deep on the D-line. And the other strength of this team is going to be the linebackers. Now, that is where defensively I feel it's going to fall off of a cliff because of everything that went on and the next craziness that we'll talk about, which was essentially trading Jalen Ramsey, who pretty much wanted out after 2 years, after a huge contract, and then an extension to make him the highest paid cornerback, to then want out and then package that with Jonnu Smith, who also wanted more money, and you get back Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now, when we analyze that situation, that is a complete disgrace in my opinion because you had a guy who, and again, I'm not defending him. I think he's a complete total clown. Great player, but total clown. He, for whatever reason, didn't want to be here, and just because of the things you hear and just you can put two and two together, did not like the direction of the organization, did not like the direction of the coach, did not have a good relationship with the coach. And then the next thing you know, he wants out. And Greer, to his credit, I'm not the biggest Chris Greer fan, to his credit, actually found a way to get back Minkah Fitzpatrick, who, forced himself out of here back in 2018. Solid player, obviously on the backside of his career, but a guy who is a smart player, hard-nosed player, not as fast as he once was, but, if in that scenario, they certainly did the best that they could do for the fact that basically Jalen Ramsey had a gun up to their head and they had to do something. So they actually got something back of value. And then the whole Jonnu Smith thing, look, he had a great year last year. He wanted more money. He signed a low-end deal when he got here because he was not productive with New England or Atlanta. Then all of a sudden he has this monster year, the highest receptions for any tight end in Dolphin history, which is pretty hard to do because they had earlier on in the 90s and 80s, they had some pretty good tight ends and early 2000s. But he wanted more money. And it would have been foolish to pay him at his age. And, look, he had great production. I'm not going to take anything away from the guy. I think he's a good player. But the fact of the matter is you had a check-down offense last year. So he was a product or a part of those numbers, let's say. I don't want to diminish the guy. Was a product of the fact that they could not push the ball downfield to Tyreek and Waddle. Defenses took him away. They wanted you to throw to Jonnu. They wanted you to keep everything underneath and throw it to the slow guy. So it's a little bit of, I understand them moving on and then again, making chicken salad out of chicken shit in the trade. And they make that trade happen. We get Minkah Fitzpatrick. But you lose top flight, high end, again, on the backside of his career, Jalen Ramsey. And the cornerback situation on this team is completely just horrendous. Throw into it Kader Kohu, who would have been your one. He probably should be a 3, maybe a 2 at corner. He's out for the year, getting hurt in training camp. And then you have guys, we're just trying to fill in pieces here. Ethan Bonner, who just suffered a hamstring injury in the preseason game. But the secondary leaves a lot to be desired. Now, we have a couple more weeks. We're still at the 90-man roster as we head into the final preseason game. They're certainly going to keep signing more corners. They've signed Hilton from the Bengals. They signed Jackson from the Raiders. And there's going to be more to come. But the bottom line is there is no continuity in the cornerback room. and you're really relying on just, scraps, the guys who should be thirds and fours, and they're going to be, thrust into being a 1 and a 2. So that's going to be a huge, huge issue, in my opinion, going into this season in a passing league. Now, where they will make up for it and where they will probably actually have overall a pretty good defense, because again, with the front and the linebackers, is Anthony Weaver, defensive coordinator. And this is going to be my hot take as I kind of give you the rundown of what my prediction is for this season. I'm not going to spoil it yet, but here's what I'm going to say. I see Anthony Weaver out-coaching the defense and being out-coaching McDaniel, essentially, right? I really feel that he is a good, solid X's and O's coach, and he's going to get the most out of this defense and this cornerback situation. He's going to get the most out of it. Now, at the end of the day, talent is going to rear its ugly head, and if you go up against a team that just is out-manning you, has, too much of a push up front and has good wideouts and can spread the field, and you have a great quarterback. I mean, I don't care what scheme you come up with. It's just you're only going to stop it for so long. But if we analyze the season, I bet you at the end of the year we're going to sit here and say, man, Anthony Weaver coached his ass off, and he got a lot out of a little. Very similar to probably what Brian Flores did from a defensive coaching standpoint the years ago that he was here. But then the question is going to be McDaniel and his coaching. Now, offensively, you still have your weapons. You have Tyreek, you have Waddle, you have a somewhat rebuilt offensive line where I think the starting 5 will probably be, we'll say, good and passable. The problem on this team, and it is a problem all the way around, is when you look at, let's go back to 2023. Not only did you have a very, very talented roster, the most talented roster the Dolphins have had in easily 15 years, but you had depth. You had some backups that could step in. And if the top guy went down on the O-line, in the secondary, on the D-line, you had some guys who could come in and it would not fall off a cliff. Now, at the end of the day in the NFL, when you have a 53-man roster, you're not going to be able to have superstars at every position, specifically superstars backing them up. However, if you have guys that they can come in and they can just keep it together, where it's just they're not the weak link in the puzzle where it falls off a cliff. The problem is in 2025, this roster has a lot of unproven guys, and it does not have the depth that I believe you're going to be able to count on. And let's face facts. Every team faces a boatload of injuries. I mean, we're seeing more injuries in training camp and preseason than ever. When we're not immune to it. We've had, countless guys now. Kohu, Ethan Bonner goes down, like I said the other day. Tyreek has an oblique issue. A-Chain is banged up. Sealer's banged up. So you have a lot of stuff you got to kind of overcome. But I just don't see the overall backup depth in the O-line, in the secondary. You have it at, like I said, on the D-line. You probably have it in a decent way. Wide receivers, you don't have it in tight end, which we're going to get to. And then that also brings us to the quarterback situation. Now, last year, when Tua went down, it was just a cluster of Tyler Huntley and then the whole saga with Mike White and Skylar Thompson and what that turned into. And essentially, you just were not prepared. Now, there's not a million really good backup quarterbacks in the league. There's a handful of guys you would take that will win you some games. And really, at the end of the day, I think your backup quarterback, you're trying to get 500 out of him. If your quarterback goes down 2-3 games, can the guy go 1-2, 2-1, 2-2, whatever? Can it just be, keep us on some form of a course, and let's not let it fall off a cliff? Problem is, last year you set yourself up to fall off of a cliff, and that's exactly what all those games were. Outside of that Cleveland, game that the defense did a lot and Tyler Huntley did a little. Best game of his career, and it still wasn't even that impressive. So what do the Dolphins do? They go out and they get Zach Wilson. Yes, Zach Wilson, the former number 2 overall pick of the Jets, who was a complete disaster, and then went and tried to get somewhat rehabilitated by the Broncos last year. Didn't play a game because they drafted Bo Nix. And this was a McDaniel move because McDaniel's all about the guy, and there's not that many who he thinks can run this offense. Tua can run it, and after that, there's real, in my opinion, there's really nobody. But let's say Zach Wilson is the quote-unquote prototype guy to do it. Now, you watch Zach Wilson, whether it be in camp, whether it be these preseason games, and I'm sorry, I don't see it. I think if Tua gets hurt, this team isn't going to be that great with Tua, but it has a ceiling probably of 10 wins. But if you give me Zach Wilson, like, pray for us all, because he's quick feet, throws off the back foot. Obviously, mentally, he's been beat up. I mean, and in fairness to him, he's here. He's trying to learn the offense. It's going to take some time, but that's a huge issue. I don't see it. Yes, is he going to be better than Tyler Huntley? Probably, because he's had some starting experience, obviously, in the league. But, I mean, I'm not counting on him to go 500. I'm just not. And then he's backed up by Quinn Ewers, who's a 7th-round draft pick, who has flashed in camp. He played fairly decently in both the preseason games. And, there's going to be this contingency of Dolphin fans. Oh, he should be the starter. I mean, the bottom line is he can't be a 7th-round pick when you have Zach Wilson, who you're paying, number 1, $6 million a year, and number 2, he actually has NFL game experience. You're not going to thrust a 7th-round pick into that situation. I mean, now maybe as the year goes on, who knows where that turns into, or if Tua got hurt, maybe. But, I mean, right now it's Tua and it's Zach Wilson backing him up, and then pray. So that's on the quarterback side of things. On the wide receiver, look, you got Hill and Waddle. To me, obviously Tyreek is going to be, I think what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to, like, use him to be very productive, but they're going to try and, as the year progresses, slide Waddle as the one. Now, I like Jalen Waddle, but I'm about to kill Jalen Waddle, and I'll tell you why. He is paid essentially like a 1 between what you're paying the 2 of those guys to get the production you did. Now, again, I'm going to give in fairness. Last year, the quarterback situation was obviously a disaster, but I'm sorry. To me, this year, Jalen Waddle needs to come out and actually be a dog. He needs to earn the contract he was given, because he's in, I think the number, I have to look it up. He's I think, in the top 10 wide receivers. He is not a top 10 productive wide receiver. And to me, that's a problem. And I think it goes like, nobody talks about it, which is weird, but he's got to step up, because he is making way too much money. And I think, in fairness, I do think he will. I think he has the ability to, but he's got to get some dog in him. And I think you're going to see him and Tua being your number 1 combination, and then Tyreek, which is fine. Then you get to the tight end situation. Obviously, you now lose Jonnu Smith, which, again, is a loss. They went out and they signed Darren Waller, which, okay, fine. He was retired last year. He's got a very weird story. And here's the weirdest thing. This is the shit that the Dolphins do that just drives you nuts. He's got the Odell Beckham syndrome, right? He has not practiced. He was retired last year. The guy's in phenomenal shape, allegedly, and he has not practiced. And we're 3 weeks away from week 1. What is this guy waiting for? I don't understand. And I don't understand why we continuously sign guys that do this. Now, who knows? Maybe they're going to break him out and unleash him. McDaniel said last week didn't want his first practices to be joint practices, because they had these practices with the Lions and the Bears, and then they'll have ones with the Jaguars this week. I don't know what the difference is, but whatever, it is what it is. The other thing I want to touch upon briefly here is last year in the post-mortem press conference, they talked a lot about how there was lateness by guys, which allegedly a lot of the guys are gone now. Ramsey was one of them, and I guess Tyreek was still here. He's one of them. But I'm sorry. I went on a rant about this last year. I'm not going to go on the same rant, but this is the things that are going to get, or these are the things that are going to get McDaniel fired. Like, we're not good enough talent-wise to sit here and not show up on time and not be all in and have distractions here and just not have a culture of winning and hard-nosed, smash-mouth football. And if that does not change, which allegedly they've worked on a lot in the offseason, it's going to cost them big time. And it's going to cost McDaniel his job, and it should, because it's unacceptable. The greatest thing that happened in the offseason, and it's a lot of people look at it as a small thing, and I don't think special teams is the end-all be-all, but it's big. They finally fired Danny Crossman after 2 years of me screaming about it, and now the special teams, and again, it's 2 preseason games, it looked crisp, organized. Guys were playing smart in the first 2 preseason games. I'm hoping and praying that is the case, because that will be very big and very huge. It's just been a thorn in their side the last 2 years, and essentially it lost you a punt return in the Bills game that lost you the division 2 years ago, and I'm still not over that game, and I'm always going to keep going back to it, because that would have been a huge, huge momentum swing if you won that and won the division 2 years ago, like you should have. So special teams, hopefully, we're in a better situation. Overall, this team, I don't have high hopes. I want to be surprised. And right now, I'm going to give you my 2025 season prediction here in August. I've been mulling it over. I've been thinking about it a lot. And I finally think I figured out where I think we are going to be when we're into January, going into February. So, that being said, I think this team is going to end up in either 3rd or 4th place in the AFC East. And man, I hope I'm wrong, because that'll suck. I think they're going to probably be 6-11. They're probably going to win 6 games. And I think right around the time of the Commanders game, probably after it, as we go into, it'll be mid-November, McDaniel will be fired. Weaver will take over. And I think the things that will lead up to this is, like I said earlier, Weaver is going to outcoach McDaniel. He is going to outcoach his unit on the defense. The special teams will be outcoached. And I think McDaniel will give you more of the same garbage of not being able to have great clock management, not knowing when to use timeouts, not knowing when to run the ball consistently, trying to be this, just speed constantly team, and then making dumb mistakes and having essentially, we'll say, half of a team that plays really dumb, which is what they've done now for 2 years. The difference is 2 years ago, talent could overcome and you would smash bad teams. But then the good teams would come and they would get one over on you because they were better coached. They knew how to step up in the big moment, and they would make things happen when you would make mistakes. So that is my prediction. I hope and pray I am so wrong. Now, I will say this to that prediction. I do think there's a ceiling for this team that is probably 10 wins. If everything broke right, if everybody was healthy, if coaching was better, if Tua was on point and healthy, like all these things that you know that you need, which are impossible to line them all up in an NFL season, I do think you could have a ceiling of 10 wins and maybe contend with Buffalo. Maybe. Probably that 10 wins would probably end up, though, however, as the wild card, because the Bills, in my opinion, another thing I hope I'm wrong about, I think they're winning the Super Bowl, and I think they're probably winning 12 or 13 games. I'm sure they'll deal with things as well as everybody does, but there's no way you're gonna sell me on this roster and make me believe that it's gonna be anything more than a 6-win team. Now, hopefully I'm wrong and they can get closer to the ceiling, but the only way they can do that is by getting off to a fast start in Indianapolis, and then you basically have 3 straight division games. You got the Pats home opener, who I think the Pats are going to be a lot better. I think you're going to have the Jets on Monday night, which I also think the Jets are going to be much better. Probably not crazy, but I think they're definitely going to be better. I think every team in this division is going to be better coached, and they're going to be all 3 of them are probably going to be better coached than the Dolphins are. and then you're going to have the Bills on a short week on a Thursday night. I mean, you better get out of that 3-1, a minimum 2-2. But that's my prediction for the season. I don't want to deal with a 6-win season. It's going to suck if it is that. But bottom line is, somebody on this team, and it's got to start with coaching, has to step up and have accountability, and there has to be smart, physical football. They cannot, when you don't have the talent, you cannot afford to essentially beat yourself and play from behind. So now that I've given you that very, very morbid 6-win season that I'm sure all Dolphin fans will want to, scream about, let's try to end this on a positive note. Football's here. Let's enjoy it. Week 1 is right around the corner. You never know. We're all undefeated. Maybe I'm dead wrong and we're going to come out and just be throwing the ball all over the place and scoring points and running people over with the run game. And we're going to be, actually create turnovers on defense. Maybe I'm wrong. That would be amazing. Please prove me wrong. And please subscribe to the Dolphins Make Me Cry podcast. I'm going to be here each and every week analyzing what's gone on in the week before, figuring out what I think is going to go on next. I got a pretty good track record on my picks as it comes to the spread. We'll be back in 2 weeks as we get ready for Indianapolis and as we get closer to what the actual legitimate spread will be. And I'll tell you, that is a huge game to get off to a good, fast start and on the road in a game, a team you should have beat last year. That is a huge opportunity. They don't know who their starting quarterback is going to be. If you can't win that game to start out the season, this is going to be an even longer season than I'm predicting. So let's go Fins. See you in a couple weeks, and click that subscribe button. Dolphins Make Me Cry podcast. See you soon.